Before we dive into today's episode, a quick reminder that early bird tickets for the Heart Centre Business Conference in Noosa in September are closing on the 13th of March. Don't miss out on securing your ticket to this amazing, spectacular, uplifting, connecting, inspiring, and practical business conference with like-hearted entrepreneurs, industry-leading speakers, including the one and only M. Rasciano, and just a beautiful opportunity to step away from your business for a few days to focus on making strategic decisions, getting inspired, getting motivated, and getting clear on exactly where you are headed from here. Go to tashcorbin.com/conference and grab your ticket before early bird closes on the 13th. I hope to see you there. If you've been growing your business and using social media in particular, chances are you've seen an ongoing debate around quantity content versus quality content. Some people recommend that you only share 2 to 3 posts a week, but you make them super high value and super high quality. Others recommend that you post 4 times a day with almost no regard for the quality of content that you produce. Well, in today's episode of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast, I'm weighing in on this quantity versus quality of social media content debate. Not only that, it's day 1 of Tashmas. What is Tashmas? Well, my birthday is on the 12th of March. So from the 1st to the 12th, we have the 12 days of Tashmas. Every day there's a podcast episode and every episode comes with a gift. It might be a discount, it might be something for free, a giveaway, or a special offer. And I hear you say, but didn't we just have Tashmas in December? That was Christmas Tashmas. This is birthday Tashmas. This is episode number 510 of the Heart Centre Business Podcast, which means you can find all the relevant links and the show notes for today's episode over at tashcorbin.com/510. And you're going to want to make sure that you note that somewhere and come on over and visit the show notes because that's where you find your Tashmas gift. Let's dive into this episode. Is it about quality or is it about quantity when it comes to social media content? Hello, I'm Tash Corbin, a business strategist and mentor based on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. The mission of this podcast is to help heart-centered entrepreneurs to make more money and in doing so, change the world for the better. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gubbi Gubbi and Jinnaburra people. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. One of the most consistent reasons my clients and audience tell me that they don't post enough on social media is that it takes far too much work for them to produce the kind of quality content that they want to be known for. And I totally understand why this would be something you would worry about. We see so much junky content on social media. We don't want to just contribute to that noise. We value the attention span and time of our audience. And ultimately, we want people to feel like following us on social media is a very valuable decision. There's return on investment for their time and for following us. But at the end of the day, is that the right move for your business? I want us to talk through this quantity versus quality debate because I think my stance on this may actually surprise you. I think it's important to start this conversation by recognizing part of the reason why there are so many people on each side of the fence when it comes to quantity versus quality is because algorithms have changed over the years. The back and forth between what is actually rewarded has been quite significant. When I first started my business, if you posted more than once a day on a Facebook page, it would severely be punished by the algorithms. Then, when it was about 2016, 2017, one of the algorithm drops started rewarding business pages that had more than 4 posts per day. Then we had a big swing back in 2019 where we saw anything more than one post a day started to be penalized again. And so there are a lot of people who actually started their business or got great advice or got great traction with their own social media at a time where the algorithms actually prioritized one over the other. And so the origin story of this debate actually isn't the fault of one certain person, or there isn't actually a content creator or an advisor on this who is fundamentally wrong with their advice. The problem is that sometimes their advice is not relevant to where we are seeing things now. And their advice is based on usually their own experience and perhaps their initial client's experience when the algorithm was clearly favoring one over the other. So I want to say that to say that I don't begrudge anyone who gives advice about whether you should be prioritizing quality of content versus quantity of content, because chances are it's part of their origin story and they truly believe that their advice is the right advice because that was the prevailing advice when they got into this. That was the prevailing advice that worked for them. When it comes to posting on social media, to be very upfront and frank with you, I favor quantity. But I don't favor quantity in the way that you might think. At the moment, we are seeing algorithms favor Instagram profiles and Facebook pages in particular that are producing multiple pieces of content per day. But I don't want you to be making decisions about what you're going to do and what standard you're going to set for yourself based on the whims of the algorithms, because chances are that will fluctuate back and forth. So when I say that I fall on the quantity side of the debate, first and foremost, I need to do some explaining, because I'm not talking about throwing a bunch of AI slop at the internet, for example. Generally, I recommend, when I talk about quantity of content, aiming to get to one post per day. One post per day will mean that when those algorithm changes fluctuate to prioritizing more content versus prioritizing less content, you're smack bang in the middle. That way, you don't have to change what you're doing in response to algorithm updates or even stay on top of those algorithm updates and then make changes to how you're approaching social media. You can just set yourself up with a really straightforward, really aligned strategy, get yourself into a routine or a rhythm, and you know your goal is one post per day. So when I say quantity, I'm not meaning 4 to 5 posts a day and needing to produce hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content every single month. But if you are someone who values being of value to your audience, producing content that's high quality, this might bring some things up for you, right? This might make you feel like, well, that's just not possible for me because it takes me so long to create my 2 posts a week that I'm currently doing. Now, I totally get that, and I do have a tendency to attract people into my audience who can sometimes be a little bit perfectionist about their content. One of the stories that I share fairly consistently comes from Art and Fear by Bales and Orland, and I call this Lessons from Pottery. So the story goes that a pottery class was divided into 2 pieces, 2 portions. One half of the class were told that their marking at the end of the semester would be based on them submitting their highest quality piece, and that one piece would be graded based on its quality. The other half of the class were told that they would only be marked on the total weight of the pieces they produced by the final day of the semester. So if they produced 20 pounds of pottery, they would be graded a C, for example. And then if they produced 40 pounds of pottery, they would be graded as a B. If they produced 60 pounds, they'd be graded as an A. So one half of the class was told they will be marked on quality, and one half of the class was told they will be marked on quantity. which half of the class actually produced the best quality piece of pottery. It was the quantity half. And the reason for that is that quantity is what creates quality. Practice is what generates your skills in this area. Additionally, when you're producing less content, you can be far more susceptible to trying to get each piece of content to do multiple jobs. And in this short attention span economy, in this exact platform you're creating content for, social media, that can be a big mistake. That can be the reason why those long form pieces of super high quality writing you've been producing just aren't getting the traction you would have expected. So by giving yourself a little nudge towards more quantity and letting go of your desire or your self-imposed level of quality control that you have to stick to or abide by in order to be worthy of sharing your content on social media, you will just by default end up producing far higher quality content by the end of the year. I mean, it's a pretty wild mindset to turn on its head, but building your skills in content creation doesn't come from finessing one piece of content perfectly. You need to be producing content consistently. Ultimately, fear of poor quality content is what generates poor quality content. And so this is even more pronounced in business because our content needs market testing. When I first started my business, I thought sharing inspirational quotes and sharing positive mantras and affirmations would be so helpful to my audience and they would love it and they would engage with it. But that turned out to be some of my least performing content. Instead, what I discovered was sometimes that one little offhand tip that was just something I threw out there because I needed something to go out for the day ended up being a revelation to my audience. I used to have these little posts called 1 Minute Evolution, and it was something you could do in your business and get it done in a minute. And one of the ones that I shared was adding your social media links and website to your signature block in your emails. So when you send out emails, your signature block has the link to your primary social platform, an invitation to join your mailing list, and maybe a link to your website. And the amount of people who commented on that post and said, "Oh my gosh, I'd never thought of this. That's such an important part of real estate in my emails." And here I am. It just says my name sent from my iPhone still. And so I thought that that piece of advice was so basic and so obvious that everyone would already know to do it. And it turned out to be one of my most engaged pieces of content in my first year of business. I actually ended up rolling that out every 60 days in my first year of business because it did so well. And I created more and more of these 1 Minute Evolution posts. And they were really straightforward, simple, obvious tips. Now, if I hadn't been pushing myself to try and get a post a day out on social media, I never would have shared that little tip. I would have instead gone, no, that's not valuable enough. I'll wait until I've got something far more meaningful to share. Or at the time, I was so wrapped up in the perfectionism of taking beautiful photos of the beach and then overlaying them with text of inspirational quotes. And we didn't have Canva back in the day, had to use Photoshop. And I didn't have access to stock images the way that we prolifically have access to stock images today. So I literally waited until I went to the beach and then took like 40 photos of different angles and different sunsets and all sorts of stuff. And then meticulously put the words over the top. So if I lived in Brisbane, an hour from a beach. So if I hadn't been to the beach recently, I literally had no beach shots to put my words over. And so I would just wait and I would have 3 or 4 weeks where I didn't have any posts going up on my social media, or the only posts I had going up was sharing my blogs. So I wanted to share that story because I think it really demonstrates that sometimes the fear of doing something that's low quality or low value is actually the very reason why your content is low quality or low value. And as business owners, we want to ensure that we are allowing our audiences to show us what it is that they value. The best content is not created in isolation with you thinking about it behind the scenes for weeks and weeks on end. It is created as a conversation with your audience. You share a half-baked idea, your audience asks you questions about it, that then solidifies and clarifies where they need that to be a little bit more in depth. You share a different version, you share it from a slightly different angle, you share a different story that tries to get that point across. All of this can only come if you've actually started sharing content consistently. The reality is that when it comes to social media, too many people in my audience are holding themselves to a standard that's so high, they're really frozen. Plus, these misogynist, racist, ableist jerks who are out on the internet are prolifically sharing so much content, they're outnumbering our posts like 15-1. And so for me, it also feels like a real act of defiance to share prolifically. Because when some 26-year-old dude who's never had a female friend in his life has some random thought pop into his brain when he's at the gym, he doesn't hold himself to that standard. He doesn't hold himself to account. He just shares that idea on the internet. Then he shares a conversation with his bro about that thought that he had on the internet. Then he shares another example of that thought on the internet. Then he makes a video. Then he gets a microphone and records a podcast. And so our response to that cannot be to hold ourselves to an even higher standard. Our response to that cannot be to not contribute to the noise of the internet because it's already too noisy. The types of people that I want to hear from, that I want to follow, are the very people who are reducing the quantity of content that they're sharing because of this need for it to be high quality, because of this need for it to solve a very specific problem or to deliver a significant piece of value. But even if it's a photo of your new hat and you're very excited about your new hat that you're going to wear out in the garden, I would rather see that than see this 26-year-old dude spew racist and misogynist and sexist and ableist junk at the internet. And the only way we are going to be able to turn the tide of social media is actually to show up and share alternative content, to share content that actually that excites us, that we want to engage with. These days, when I'm scrolling social media, I am actively looking for small business owners, creators who are bringing joy and beauty to my feed, people who are giving really solid advice. I mean, I swear my family think that I'm concurrently trying to get pregnant through IVF, parenting teenagers, because I don't care that that content isn't relevant to me. I just want to engage with more content that's being helpful. That's why social media proliferated so much when it did. I mean, beyond the original, comparing girls, gross, that old Zuckerberg and his friends created Facebook for, the reason why it absolutely exploded and people really got excited about it was because they wanted to connect with other people. It was the recipe sharing. It was the advice sharing. It was the updates from your friends. It was the photo dumps after a night out. That's why we wanted social media. And even though we are now business owners who are engaging on social media for slightly different reasons, the reason why the people who consume your content are there remains the same. The reason why I'm there remains the same. I want to connect with and hear from as many people as possible who are contributing to my life, who are contributing to the world, who are contributing to our connection. And I did a very ranty, very impassioned Facebook Live earlier this year about the reasons people have been giving me as to why they haven't shared something on their social platforms lately. Because I do follow a lot of you who listen to this podcast. And one of my biggest frustrations is I feel like I never see your content. And in 2025 and 2024, it used to be that part of the reason was the algorithm. I could tell people were sharing content because when I went to their page, I could see the content there, but it wasn't getting into my newsfeed. And so because of that, I spent most of 2024 and 2025 actively seeking out content from your pages and from your Instagram profiles and engaging with it. I was training the algorithm to show me your content. But in the last few months, I have been going to people's pages and profiles because, I haven't seen anything from that person in a while, and they haven't posted anything in a while. And the reasons that people give me are almost laughable. So as I said about that, bro who's sharing his little brain fart of an idea, like this is what we're almost trying to battle against. He doesn't even have anything of value to share, but you're not sharing your super helpful and straightforward tip because you think, it's just too simple. Or you're not sharing your latest photo that you took of yourself in the garden because you've got a little muffy spot in your hair. What? And that's when I got so impassioned and I did this Facebook Live, and it really was a little bit of a talking to, because at the end of the day, I would rather hear your half-baked idea, your random thought bubble that happened while you were in the shower, than have to listen to another one of these gym bros try and tell me why I'm giving men the ick, as though that's something I care about. When it comes to this practice-based approach to content creation, we need to create a new neural pathway. I think about something, I post it. I take a photo, I post it, or I put it into my content bank for posting. I have an idea, I write a blog, I create a podcast. I am looking through that consistently for content ideas that can then go out on social media. Everything that I think I want to share, I just share. And I want you to do the same. Because when you create that neural pathway of, that's an idea, okay, I'll just share it, you're inherently building your quality of content because you're building the skill. You're giving yourself an opportunity to practice. Okay, so I have a few caveats when it comes to creating quantity of content. Number one, don't use AI and try not even to use prompts or templates. Prompts can be a good starter, but they're a bad crutch. And AI in particular is going to be horrific for that skill development. So rather than using templates and AI, if you need to start with a few little prompts, that's absolutely fine to get you started. But I would recommend that you aim to get to the point where you can create content fairly prolifically without having to rely on that crutch. Caveat number 2, I don't mean I'm just going to phone it in. This is terrible content. This is skill building. This is message testing as an exercise. And so when I say I fall on the quantity side, I'm not saying at the expense of quality. I don't even think about it. I'm just throwing my first thought at the internet. I have a few little things that help me to ensure I'm creating something that will be for my audience. So firstly, I know my niche. I'm very clear on who I'm creating this content for. Secondly, I have my core messaging. So my core messaging can inform how I approach something, the types of keywords and phrases I might lean towards, or even just being clear on the transformation that my ideal clients are looking to achieve will ensure that if I am going to give a tip, for example, these days about adding your links to your email signature block, I can be far more specific with that tip. So rather than just saying, hey, add your links to your signature block,